Hi, my mom said I needed a creative outlet, so instead of sketching or journaling or cooking or anything like that, I decided to make a YouTube channel and put videos on it so that anybody in the world could watch it whenever they want to. So today I wanted to talk about why I purposely lost my 4.0 GPA. I graduated with a 3.88 GPA. I scored about average on my MCAT, and so far I've been accepted to 7 medical schools. I wanted to talk about this for a while. I think the idea of being some perfect student causes a lot of stress and anxiety. A lot of my friends and people that I knew in college went through their entire 4 years with this overwhelming pressure to be some academic weapon and ended up sacrificing their mental health and their time. And it's become kind of the status quo for students to feel that way, especially if you're pursuing science, research, or medicine, because you're forced to stand out to have a chance. My goal is that by the end of the video and by the end of me talking so much, you'll see that there might be better uses for your time and you won't feel so pressured to have a 4.0, and that there are better ways to stand out, especially to medical schools, than just having some amazing straight A's. And I promise I will talk about medical school admissions since I just went through it. And I feel like I have some advice to offer. Maybe not. Who knows? We'll see. So what happened? Why did I decide to lower my GPA? Why did I decide to get rid of my 4.0? I know it sounds crazy, but I promise you I have a reason for it. And I still stand by that reason, but I'll get to that later. To answer everything, we have to go back to my sophomore year. There I was, a perfect, diligent student with absolutely no stress or anxiety. Everyone who knew me would say that I was the pinnacle of mental health and self-care. I was thriving. Just kidding, that's absolutely not what happened. I was depressed, I was anxious, I was gaining weight, distancing myself from friends and family, and spending the majority of my free time scrolling mindlessly through TikTok instead of doing something worthwhile to rest. I remember spending months just sitting in my dorm trying to hate myself into loving myself, which is not how that works, by the way. I kept having this recurring thought that I needed to change something, but at the time I couldn't really place what that was supposed to be. I couldn't understand why I felt that way or what I needed to do. And a few days later, I kept noticing the same theme of prioritization. I might be browsing TikTok and see a video. No, horrible. What am I doing? I would be scrolling through TikTok or some other social media and see a post about how somebody who looked a lot happier than I was prioritizing their life better. After a while, I stopped being so stubborn and realized that maybe I should revisit my priorities. And when I did, I figured out that school and grades and exams were all at the top, and friends, family, health, exercise, nutrition, drinking enough water, all the fun stuff was at the bottom. To me, as a student, this was normal. There was always this external pressure to be the best and to perform because my success and my worth was based off of my grades and my GPA. Until I realized all that external pressure that I was feeling was just misplaced internal pressure. In fact, my parents always told me to not push myself so hard, to not worry about my grades, to not worry about fighting and getting a part-time job while studying, because they wanted me to focus on my health and academically and not to spread myself out too thin, which is, ironically, exactly what I was doing. So over the next week, I kind of revisited my goals, which I had never written down. And huge tip, I would write down your goals if you haven't already. It helps a lot if you can keep looking at them and realizing what you want to do. I reworked my prioritizations, I reworked my goals, and I realized that my next year, which was my junior year, would be a lot harder than my sophomore year. I'm sure some of you know this, but if you don't, your junior year is normally when your major-specific classes start and your program-specific classes start. So instead of taking your gen ed like biology or chemistry, you might be taking something like physiological pharmacology, which was mine because I was in biomedical sciences. Not only that, but I was gonna be spending more time in research lab. My hours were picking up between 15 to 20 a week because of my study. I started volunteering and shadowing. I started being active in more clubs because I realized that my first 2 years, which did start during the pandemic, I had done pretty much nothing and I had nothing to show. And finally, I would be studying for the MCAT, which was a huge task on its own. I didn't want to go into that next year with this pressure to be the best of the best or the top of my class. So I decided to let one thing go, and that would be studying so hard and the extra 8 hours a week to make an A on a class that I could easily make a B in. So what I did was picked a class that I was easily making an A in. I think it was organic chemistry, and I decided to fail my final. I think our final was the standardized exam for everybody, and I just chose not to study for it. A little side note, if you don't know, I believe it's the American Chemistry Society exam, and it's like more of a standardized test that you have to study specifically for. They sell like workbooks for it, and it was not at all like the class I was taking. So I failed the final. I think I made like a 30 out of 100 or something, and I got a B in the class. I think most importantly of all, I wanted this imaginary number to stop floating above my head like it was the measure of my worth. I was really exhausted with defining my success and value by whether I could make an A in a class. If I could accept that getting a B in a class wasn't the end of the world and wasn't going to make or break my career before it even started, I could spend more time focusing on what really mattered. And for me, that was one, the MCAT, because that was the biggest thing on my mind. Two, filling up my portfolio and my CV with extracurriculars and putting my time into something that mattered. And three, which really should have been number one, focusing on my mental health. And it worked. From that point on, I stopped viewing it as either getting an A or failing. I made multiple Bs in classes that I probably could have worked just a little bit harder in to make that A, but putting that much time and effort into something that wasn't fulfilling didn't really make sense to me anymore. I was spending more time enriching myself with what I wanted to learn. I was spending more time sleeping and worrying about my health or going to the gym and playing basketball with friends, which I found a lot of fun, instead of spending the extra 3 hours to get 2 or 4 more questions right on an exam. Now, I want to be really clear about something. I'm not telling you to do what I did. I'm not saying go and fail a class or get a B in a class or even a C in a class and ruin your 4.0. If you're able to handle that overwhelming pressure and all that stress and still take care of your health, do it. That's awesome. You're better than a lot of people, and I encourage you to keep it up. But on the other hand, please don't sacrifice your mental health or your well-being for a grade. It's just not worth it. It's just a number, and I promise you I'll bring up some points that will show you that. So first, I want you to ask yourself something. What was the last big academic stressor in your life, and how did that affect you at the time? For me, it was either studying for the MCAT or maybe going to a conference. I was terrified. It was very stressful. But now I want you to ask yourself this. If it's in the past, are you still actively stressing and worrying about it? For me, the answer is no, and I feel like the answer is probably not. School's designed in a way that you're always worried about that next big thing coming up. You know, you ace your midterm, you feel good about it for like 5 minutes, and then you have to go off to your next one. Now, of course, you're allowed to be worried, you're allowed to be stressed. That's life. That's natural. I know I was stressed about the MCAT for at least a month leading up to it, but the point I want to make is that it's not worth sacrificing your health over. Getting an A on some random general chemistry exam isn't going to make the top 10 best decisions you've ever made in your life. Even for me, graduating college was pretty cool for like a few minutes. Then it was off to medical school admissions. I think a lot of people fall into this vicious cycle of putting so much effort and so much stress and anxiety into something, completing it, not getting enough fulfillment, and then stressing about the next big thing. Especially in college, I knew so many people who would sacrifice their sleep to study and grind for the extra few hours, and that's just diminishing returns. Your brain needs sleep, your body needs rest, and you shouldn't sacrifice your health just for a grade that you probably won't remember in a few days. The moral of this point in the story is that you shouldn't let your responsibilities take over your health. You should take care of your health so that you can better handle your responsibilities. Is it obvious that I'm looking down to read? I want to bring up a rule that I was told when I started college as a freshman, and I think it's a fantastic rule, especially for college, but really just anywhere in your life. It's called the 5 fingies rule. 5 fingers rule, but I like saying fingies. So basically, if you can't fit all of your long-term responsibilities on one hand, then you're doing too much and you're spreading yourself out too thin. So, being a full-time student is number 1. It's always going to be number 1. Number 2 is any clubs that you're in. And if you're in multiple clubs, those take up multiple fingies. Don't put your different clubs on the same fingie. If you're in research or any other type of job or part-time job like a TA, that's number 3. Any honors program you might be in is number 4. And then any long-term commitment, whether it's volunteering or shadowing or band or anything else, that's number 5. And once again, each of your responsibilities takes up one fingie. Don't stack the fingies. So here's my personal example. Oh, I just touched my mic. So here's my example. 1, I was a full-time student. 2, I was working in a research lab. 3, I was working as a TA in a chemistry lab. 4, I was part of the leadership for a Spanish and Latino student association. And 5, I was shadowing, I think. My camera died. Oh no, it's back. Is it back? We're back? Hi, my camera died. And my friend gave me the wrong charger, so I had to search a closet for a charger, like a random camera charger, which I've never seen before because this is the first video I've ever filmed and the first camera I've ever touched. But in the meantime, I did my Duolingo and they were talking about a medical school exam, which was cool. And then I did my Wordle. I got it in 4. I guess it's backwards. We started with Shart, went straight into Baggy. Then we went into Algae, which I thought was a goated guess. And it was Angle. Spoilers. Not like it matters. Now, if you're planning to go to medical school like I am, AAMC comes out of nowhere with this thing called the MCAT and just breaks your fingies completely and ruins the whole process that you have going on. I know a lot of people, even kind of including myself, who added a 6th or a 7th fingy, which is not allowed. When you add extra stuff, you burn out very, very quickly. For me, I made that compromise that if I could just study a few hours less a week for an exam, I could spend more time on the MCAT while still balancing all of my extracurriculars. And it worked. So let's just say instead of spending 2 to 3 hours extra a week studying, you spend that studying for an MCAT. If you total that over a month, you're going to get about 8 to 10 hours, which you can take an entire full-length exam for. And if you total that over the common study time, which is 3 to 5 months, you get 3 to 5 extra full-length exams. To me, it's a no-brainer. Oh, I hit the mic. To me, it's a no-brainer. I think it's generally accepted that there's a positive correlation between the amount of exams you take and what you get on the real thing. And I also think that the extra 5 to 8 points on your MCAT looks a hell of a lot better than the extra 0.1 on your GPA. I want you to put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's on the admissions board at a medical school. If you were comparing these two students based on stats alone and no extracurriculars or anything else, who would you choose? The first student has a 3.95 GPA and got a 501 on the MCAT, and the second student has a 3.85 GPA and got a 509 on the MCAT. You would probably choose the one with the higher MCAT score because the difference in GPA is so negligible. And for your information, the statistics also agree. In 2024, a 501 on the MCAT was the 51st percentile and a 509 was the 76th. I couldn't even find a reported value from AAMC on GPAs above a 3.79, but I did find that 60.9% of all applicants did have a GPA that met that threshold. And my pre-med advisors pretty much told me the same thing. Now, again, I'm not telling you to ruin your grades. If you can make a 4.0 while taking care of yourself, that's awesome and keep doing it. I just want you to consider if it's worth it before dying on that hill. Take my example as more of a cautionary tale. It's not like getting a B in organic chemistry is what changed my entire outlook on life. It's just what helped me break out of that jail that I put my mindset in. So looking back, do I still support my decision? I think by now you realize that I do 100%. I feel like after breaking out of that mindset and that jail that I just described, I started prioritizing better and I started doing things that made me happy. I started taking myself out on like singular little dates at a coffee shop. I started going out to eat by myself or maybe taking a walk around the park, and it brought me out of that darkness slowly but surely. And as I promised, I would talk about medical school admissions since I just went through it. I found no trouble having less than a 4.0. Like I said at the beginning, I had a 3.88 or something like that, and that was still considered very, very good. In my experience, it was arguably better for me to have a story to tell about why I lost my 4.0 than having a 4.0. And medical school admissions see stellar students all the time that you need something else to stand out. I think having some anecdotal point of view during an interview or writing in my secondary application just helped me stand out even more. Obviously, I'm mostly speculating. There's no true way to know for sure what they were thinking, but as long as you have a solid GPA above a 3.79, I don't think you have to stress about it so much. And even if you have lower, look at the stats. People have gotten into medical school. There are other better ways to stand out. I know that college in general, and especially medical school applications, can seem like this insurmountable obstacle. It's more doable than you think. You just have to have the right mindset for it. Well, anyways, I'm done. I'm done rambling. I know it's been pretty niche. I know I've been rambling for a while, but honestly, I just wanted to tell a story and talk about some things that have been on my mind recently. Obviously, this is the first video I've ever posted. Like I said at the beginning, it's more of a creative outlet, but if you do have feedback to help me improve, I would greatly appreciate it. Thanks for listening to me talk this long. I don't know how to end a video. Somebody told me that every subscriber that I get, the government takes $1 off of my student loans. So if you do subscribe, just remember you're helping me dig my way out of debt $1 at a time. All right, be safe, drink water. Bye-bye.